On this week's episode of Top of the List, we discuss the series finale of WandaVision. Will we find out all the answers to our questions? How is this episode going to set up the rest of the MCU? What are our predictions for what will happen? We're going to talk about everything, including our scores for this episode and our scores for the entire series. We have for everything. We're going to talk about all of their characters, including White Vision, which is where we want to start the show off with. Of course, I'm Dom, here with my co-host, RB.
RB, who is not colorblind. This guy's blue, not white. Just saying.
So we're talking about, of course, last week's end credit scenes, right?
That's what we're jumping.
I was trying to tell Ryan about White Vision in the comics, and he didn't realize that the White Vision I was talking about was the White Vision in the post-credit scene because he thought that that Vision was blue. He says, what do you say? He looks more like Dr. Manhattan.
Yeah, Dr. Manhattan, or maybe even, a glint. Of course, original Vision has the Mind Stone, but I was even looking at it like shaded like the Tesseract or the which one's the blue? The Space Stone's purple.
Space Stone.
Oh, Space Stone. Okay, yeah.
Blue.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally see where you're getting from. But,
I had no idea what you were saying. Quite honestly,
so funny.
like I showed in the picture, I saw him as blue. I didn't realize it was the lighting. Now this episode, I do get what you're saying now with the White Vision.
Yeah, and of course we see what happens there. We won't go into spoilers yet, but of course we do want to give our scores for this episode.
Yeah.
So we just want to give you guys that little PSA last week. And of course, we want to apologize to our audio listeners if there was a big gap in the audio there because we were kind of trying to figure out what was going on.
It was way over my head. Like I said, Dom's a comic reader. I am not. I had no idea what he meant by White Vision. If you remember from the episode we went to, like, yes, I get Paul Bettany's white. I had no idea what he meant there. So my apologies for that break in the flow of our show last week.
All right, but we do get to see what happens with White Vision in this episode.
Well, before that, no spoilers.
Right, yeah, I'm just saying.
Right.
And we get to see what all of our other characters happens, and it picks up right where we leave off and at last week. And from there on, I thought that, well, first of all, I thought this episode was going to reveal a little more than it did.
Yes.
Which is okay. I'm glad that they played it a little more coy than they usually do in the MCU. Usually they like to set up big things. This one was more of a tease for what, and it's really vague the way they teased where the direction they're going is. But I have some predictions. Of course, I'm going to save my predictions for the predictions section at the end here. But just going to go ahead and give my score here. I thought this was a great finale. I think that this episode was a little bit better than last week's episode, but even then, I don't know. It's kind of a toss-up. There's a few moments. It's not the best episode of the season. I think that turned out to be one of the earlier episodes. I think it was the Full House episode was our highest score.
Couldn't agree more with you, yeah.
So it didn't reach that high, so I'm going to go 8 out of 10 for this finale. Still a great episode in my book. Not quite anything that I would characterize as amazing happens though, okay? Maybe one moment is kind of teeing me up for that, but I want to save it for spoilers.
Okay, yeah. I was also disappointed with this episode. I'm gonna put it in like the 6.5 range.
Okay.
And I mean, it's hard to do that for a season finale. And I think if this was an episode in the middle of the season, this would fall more in a 7.5, 8 range. But the fact that this was a finale, and a finale of a miniseries at that, not a finale where, okay, we can wait 6 months and then there's going to be a new season. I mean, this is the end of the show. And I understand it's not the end of the MCU, obviously, but to know that and to see how they ended it, I was fairly disappointed for a finale. It was an okay episode. Almost to that good range. There was some cool stuff that happened in this episode, but just not nearly tied up the way I would have liked to have seen it tied up. It was more, almost, if you will, like a mid-season finale. And, for anyone who watches, episodic television shows as they come out. But, that being said, I think that speaks to the series, and in the sense of this series, one of my flaws with it, before going too much into my final series score, I just think it was a cool series for a lot of reasons, but they almost tried to do too much with it. And I think that may have hurt this series a little bit. But all in all, this was an okay finale. It was not the finest work from a show that's put out some really excellent episodes.
And I want to just put it out there, Ryan, you're not alone on this one. I've looked at a lot of the reviews over the last night, and over Friday today as they came out, and a lot of people are saying, it was a fine entry. It wasn't anything spectacular. It didn't blow anybody away like we thought it might.
Right.
And that's kind of the biggest disappointment of the show. And that's the reason why I think now we should just go ahead and give our season scores.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the reason why I'm going to give this season an 8 out of 10.
Okay.
I'm thinking maybe it's almost just the caliber of filmmaking put on the display makes me want to give it an 8.5.
Okay.
But then again, the story did let me down in a few areas.
Yes.
Specifically, I think I want to bring this up, and I need to know if we agree on this or not. Everything that happened with Sword kind of fizzled out in the end for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Especially Monica Rambeau's storyline.
Agreed. And obviously with, I guess without saying too many spoilers, there was a post-credit scene. It did involve Monica Rambeau. So she's seemingly going to have a bigger role, going forward in the MCU.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm probably pretty on par with you. I'm going to give this a 7.5 out of 10, between that range of good and great.
Okay. Yeah.
Looking at,
definitely think this was a good show, and I think it's like just a little bit above that great show.
right, like you said, with you wanted to give it an 8.5. I'm giving it a 7.5 and not a 7, because there were a lot of really cool things done with the show, things that we have never seen before in the MCU, which is why I'm giving it that extra half-point bump. It's not just a good show, but like you said, there were some points of the story that let us down. There were some characters that felt really just shoved in there to be shoved in, that didn't have great character development. And there are a lot of questions that are unanswered that, we don't know how long we're going to have to wait to see. I would put this on par with like a in between, two giant MCU films, like an original Thor, or even like a Thor 2 or an Iron Man 2. I mean, I love Iron Man 2, so and it may not be the best analogy for me. But, a film that like came in between like an Avengers and an Avengers 2, like right in the middle, where we still have, we're a year and a half out from a big film and a year and a half past the previous big film. It was just sort of an in-betweener. And I think that also has to do with, I don't really feel an affinity to either of our characters, Wanda or Vision. They were sort of background characters in the MCU.
And this is where I think I'm going to disagree with you. This is why I give this show an absolutely great score. Now, did this show do anything to credit it as a must-see show? No, I don't think so. That's why I give it an 8.5, or even an 8 if I were to, lower it a little bit. But I think I would probably stick with 8.5 because, number one, like you said, all the new ground they treaded in this show was phenomenal. All the new stylistic choices they made, all the new storytelling choices they made were fantastic. But for me, what I think, this is where we disagree, or at least maybe I can persuade you to see it through this lens. This is not your Iron Man 2. This is not your big MCU film. This is much smaller scale. And what this is not supposed to be part of everything. Like, every week I was theorizing, how are they going to bring the X-Men in? How is this Quicksilver going to come into this universe? Are they going to bring in a bunch more like magical characters? Is there going to be demons involved? Is Doctor Strange going to show up? That's not what the show was about. What this was like you just said, it's about two characters that were shoehorned in during Age of Ultron that never got a full origin story. This is Vision, and more specifically, this is Wanda's origin story. This is how the massive audience that, comes to the big major MCU movies finds out that, people that don't read the comics find out that Wanda Maximoff is the Scarlet Witch. What is the Scarlet Witch? What is magic? This is what that serves as. This is to bring everybody into that aspect of the MCU, and that's all it is. This is the origin story of the Scarlet Witch. That's what we got. That's what WandaVision is.
I agree with that statement. That is true. Yeah. And the big question is now why? And I think we are left waiting until we see Doctor Strange, the Multiverse of Madness.
I think why we got it, and this is both the biggest advantage and the biggest disadvantage to the show. The big thing is that no one knew who Scarlet Witch was. My mom in Infinity War, I remember when she shows up and she starts kicking ass, and she's with Black Widow, and they're all having that all girl fight in Infinity War. I remember my mom, she sees Scarlet Witch show up and she's like, oh, wow, that was cool, but who is she? Like, nobody knows who she is, and that's what this show was for.
But this show, I don't even know if it did a good job of that, because it completely rebranded the Scarlet Witch.
That's what it's meant to do. It's retconning what they had done in WandaVision.
Okay, so you're saying that was the goal of it, because this was not the Wanda Maximoff that we've seen.
Yes, parts of it were, absolutely. It was continuation of the one we saw from like Civil War and Infinity War and that storyline.
I don't even remember her in Civil War, man. I remember her in...
She was a big part of Civil War.
I remember her in Age of Ultron.
Yeah.
And I remember her in, I guess in Civil War, she started in Nigeria, right? The explosion. Mm-hmm. Was that in Civil War? Mm-hmm. So I remember that. And then I remember her obviously in Infinity War, and then at the very end of Endgame.
Yeah.
But I mean,
look,
she's sprinkled a little bit here or there. I mean, like I said,
and that's purely my point. That's all I'm saying is this was a side character that no one knew anything about. We needed a full series of episodes to see what this character was about. The movies didn't do it enough service.
Correct.
And number one, the movies haven't explored magic enough. We needed to get the down to the nitty-gritty.
I don't know that I agree.
What is runes? What is this book that she has that we see?
I don't know that I agree with that statement. I feel like we had a whole feature film about magic with Doctor Strange, and we're gonna have another one.
Of it.
We're gonna have a whole other one.
We're gonna have another Doctor Strange film, but that's where they're going.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So let's hit pause here. I think it's time to go into spoilers. Okay. I'd like to, without, I'm worried that we're getting into a heated conversation here and spoilers are going to come out. So here's our spoiler warning. For those of you who haven't watched the series finale of WandaVision, titled The Series Finale, go ahead and click pause, watch it, then come on back and you'll have the rest of our review. But our scores for the episode, mine was a 6.5 out of 10. Dom, yours was a 7.5, correct?
8.
8 out of 10. And then for the series, you said 8.5?
8.5.
8.5, and I'm going to go with a 7.5 out of 10. All right, spoiler warning. All right, here we go.
Nice sound effect.
I've been working on it all season.
So should we just talk like big spoilers or right at the top?
I think let's just start at the top. Okay. I mean, we pick up right in this episode where we left off last week.
And we have a lot of action in this episode right at the beginning.
Right
of course.
At the beginning, yeah.
We get to see, I guess we should probably talk about Agatha's big plan. That was our biggest question about this episode is what is she doing? Mm-hmm. And her thing in this episode is she wants to steal the powers of the Scarlet Witch for herself and then take over Westview and recreate reality for herself. She wants to fix, quote unquote, the hex that Wanda made.
Does she?
Yeah, that's her plan.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
I don't know that that's the case.
What is her case?
I mean, and this is a big spoiler, so jumping to the end of the episode, when she takes the powers from Wanda before our big twist at the end, she says, you can never fix this.
Yeah.
So I feel like she has no plan to. That's what I still don't understand what Agatha's storyline is.
She wanted to take.
She just wanted powers
to create. No, to create like Wanda did. That's why.
What did she want to create?
She wanted to create her own reality.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. That's why she was just craving the powers of the Scarlet Witch.
That's stupid. That's, in your words, a mustache twirler. She wants the power just to have the power.
Yeah.
At least like Thanos, he wanted the Infinity Stones, but he had a goal. He wanted the Infinity Stones to erase half of the population, to make Earth a peace, or the world, the whole universe a peaceful place. That's a reason. She just wants power to have power. Mustache twirler, yeah, I got the power, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought I can see where you're coming from. I agree. It was kind of a weak, like there wasn't that much of a backstory besides what we saw in Salem, which was pretty cool to watch. But
and we
other than that, there's not that much.
I think that was something that we were a little disappointed on last week, that we didn't get a callback on why, what was going on in Salem. We got a little bit more into that in this episode. Of course, we get Agatha's big power on top of magic is when she's attacked by another witch's magic, she can take the powers.
Yeah, which we see in the last episode.
Correct. But we see that, and then we get a callback to that scene in Salem when Wanda uses her power to sort of go into Agatha's nightmare, flashing her back to that scene where she kills her entire coven. I guess, does she kill them or just takes their power?
Like kills them.
I couldn't tell if they were okay. Yeah. So Agatha, to me, had some potential after last week's episode. This week's episode, I think it was a storyline that was not touched on enough. I'm curious to see, obviously there were some hints that we're going to see Agnes, who's now Agatha trapped in Westview. We'll get to see more of her later on. But as of right now, I'm still puzzled by her necessity altogether. Besides, they needed a villain.
This plays into, you have to just look at this show differently than what it actually is. I honestly think this is the only way, because I've been thinking about it for a long time. I came in with way too high of expectations for this show.
Me too.
And we both did. We both talked about it, and when we were doing our, flashback to our predictions when we announced all of the, Disney announcements, when all those new shows were announced. We said, WandaVision was one of our most anticipated shows to come out.
Especially when that trailer dropped.
Yeah, we were really excited.
Incredible, yeah.
And, I think that it fulfilled a lot of what we wanted, but then again, it left a lot up in the air for the movies to answer, which is kind of what I'm afraid of. I have two things. Let me say two things. Yeah. I'm afraid of that because I'm afraid that these shows are just going to be, let's go watch the next movie. You know what I mean? Yes. Just an extent. Go watch the next movie.
That was my response that I was going to say to you. I never watched Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. I never watched.
But they were never like that.
Okay, because that was my thought is if these shows are going to be like those, why do I even need to watch them? Why can't I just wait until
the shows were Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Agent Carter were never as connected to the movies.
I didn't know. Okay.
This is directly connected to
Got it. Okay.
And you can tell that right away.
Got it.
And I think but like I said, I hope that's not where these shows are going. I hope they're going to have it like Falcon and Winter Soldier. That's going to be a big plot development. I hope it's not just, let's get this storyline done so we can show this part off in the next movie, But so that's my one thing. Then the other thing I was going to come back to about this was, what were we talking about?
Talking about WandaVision.
I lost track of my thoughts.
We were just talking about how this series, where you were afraid that it would become that all these MCU shows are going to have to do with just picking up one part of the plot line leading up to let's go see the movies. But then you were saying, but the sort of a flip side of that.
The flip side of that is that I think it could be cool that maybe. I don't know. I just really don't want them to just promote it for the movies. But then again, the whole thing that you're talking about with Agatha Harkness and how it's just set up for what could happen later. Yeah. That's what I was trying to tie it back into. Okay. With Agatha, I was trying to remember what I was like. Okay, so
she's gonna show up in that Multiverse of Madness.
My point exactly.
Wanda's gonna get involved there, and she's gonna not know what's going on. She's gonna go, I gotta go get my buddy Agnes and turn her back into Agatha, and she's gonna have some corny lines as Catherine Hahn. Because honestly, I hated Agatha Harkness, but I loved Catherine Hahn as Agnes. She was incredible. No matter what sitcom era we were in, she was probably the best character.
See where you're going there? I think she would still get as Agatha Harkness, and this is kind of my main point I was trying to get back to. The best part about this show, and like I said, you have to look at it from this point of view. This is the Scarlet Witch's origin story. When you see Batman's origin story, or anyone's origin story, they're set up with their main villain. Side by side, right? Think back to Jack Nicholson as the Joker in that original Batman with Michael Keaton. Batman is born in that we see Bruce Wayne's parents die and everything like that, but we also see the Joker born in that. Yes. This is the birth of their rivalry. This is like you're saying. This is what I'm trying to get at. Is like you're saying Agatha Harkness doesn't have that great of a backstory. Her only purpose is to steal the Scarlet Witch's power. Correct. Because there's no history there yet. This is the beginning of that. This is the beginning of their rivalry. Now that Scarlet Witch has trapped Agnes in Westview as Agnes, as without her powers, and she's put her under the spell. Now, whenever Agatha Harkness is released again, she has a motive to get back at Scarlet Witch, which I think will improve the next time we see her. So that's the flip side of the coin. So that's the end of my thing, and I've been talking way too long, and it's your turn, buddy.
I don't know that I agree with that, but let's digress from Agatha Harkness. I mean, Either way, I think we can both agree that this was a character that could have been awesome, that needed a lot more development.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is this show
there will be more
development.
You're saying there's going to be more. I understand that, but right now, I just think they could have done a lot more with her. And I've been outspoken quite a bit about how I'm not the biggest fan of that. We're going with these MCU miniseries. I'd much rather feature films.
Yeah.
And look, WandaVision episodes 1 through 6 pretty much made me shut that up. I really enjoyed how they released it as an episodic television show with the different eras of sitcom, but I full well think that between episodes 8 and 9, we should have had a Scarlet Witch standalone film. I mean, what? Each episode was 45 to 50 minutes. That's an hour and a half. And I think we both felt after episodes 8 and 9 that there was a lot left to be explained. Well, an MCU film would probably be an additional hour that they could have spent explaining the backstory of Agatha Harkness, explaining the origins of the Scarlet Witch and what that means, rather than just showing us the Book of the Damned and saying, "Oh, the Scarlet Witch is in the Book of the Damned, and that's a bad thing."
The Dark Hole.
Yes, the Dark Hole.
Badass. I mean, that's a thing in the comics. That's pretty cool. The Dark Hole.
Okay, but yeah, not everyone who's a fan of the MCU film
exactly.
and universe, knows the comics. I don't. I've watched every one of these movies multiple times.
Can I just say now, I'm predicting that the reason we don't hear that much about the Dark Hole is because that's what starts the multiverse of madness. Okay, that's my big prediction. I know I'm not in the prediction section yet, but that's my big prediction. Okay,
so we've talked about Agatha Harkness.
Yes.
I think our next big scene, scene. How about we get White Vision flying in, and then we get a battle between, White Vision goes and Wanda thinks it's Vision, and he tries to crush Wanda's head in, and then Vision, the one that Wanda has spawned, comes, and there's a cool fight between the two of them.
Yeah, let's go White Vision and Hex Vision.
Yeah, okay. Perfect. Okay. Because neither of them are the actual Vision.
No.
Okay, so we get this awesome battle between Vision, Hex Vision, and White Vision. But it culminates a really cool symbolic scene in a library.
One of my favorite scenes of the series.
Yeah, without a doubt. I agree with you. And of course, in very classic Paul Bettany Vision-esque, it doesn't end with a big punch, who throws the last punch. It ends with a philosophical question, a story of the ship of Theses. Yes. I don't know if you had heard this before. I did not. I don't know if it's a real thing.
Yes, it is.
Talking about a famous boat or a famous ship, but it's made of wood, so the wood rots, so they have to replace planks. Once every piece of wood has been replaced, is it still the ship of Theses?
Right.
And this is a great philosophical question for Vision. You have two Visions here, Hex Vision and White Vision, neither of which who are the original Vision.
Right.
And are either of them Vision?
Right. And it's really thought-provoking.
Yes.
And the performances from Paul Bettany, I guess it's both him, right?
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
Absolutely.
Really great. And like you said, it calls back to that fantastic sequence. One of my, probably the best part of Age of Ultron was that ending scene where he talks to Ultron and he talks about humanity. He says, "Look, I was born just yesterday." Yeah. That's one of the best Vision lines. He has these great lines. Yes. Last week, he had another great one. What is grief if not love, perseverance? He has these great philosophical lines, and that was one of the best scenes of the series in this episode.
Agreed. Yeah. And then, of course, this ends with another question mark. So once we get, we have this great conversation between White Vision and Hex Vision. Hex Vision, I'm not really sure what happened when he touches where
he is implanting Vision's memory, or he's unlocking Vision's withheld memories that Sword had.
Right, because we've seen all throughout the season he has that ability. Okay, I didn't necessarily get that, but great. He does that. We have a realization from White Vision after he says his goal or his programming is to destroy the Vision. He goes, "I am Vision." Or I am the Vision, and then he flies away. So there are a couple of questions when I'm watching this. I immediately call back to the line saying his programming is to destroy the Vision. He now realizes that he is the Vision and he is going to destroy himself.
Okay, I can see that happen.
That was where my mindset was. But I think you had another theory as well when we were talking about this in pre-production.
What was that?
Well, no, I think you were saying that you don't think that he destroyed himself. You think he maybe went off to contemplate, and maybe White Vision will be recalled again now that he has the memories.
Well, exactly, and this is what I wanted to explain to you too, but I want to wait till we're on the show.
Yeah.
I think last week I was talking to you about how White Vision is from the comics and he comes back without the Mind Stone. And without the Mind Stone, he's unable to have the emotions that he had before, which is where I think we're at with this new Vision. He has the memories, just like in the comics. He has the memories of the old Vision, yet he is still not Vision. Even though he has all those memories, it still doesn't make him Vision, because without the Mind Stone, it doesn't give him all his humanity, his emotions. And I think that is something that's going to be explored. In what property, I do not know. I think probably Multiverse of Madness, since Wanda's going to be in that. And I think he's going to have a great cameo in that, and I'm looking forward to it.
Okay. I do think as well that, we could be playing, like you said, he doesn't have his humanity because he doesn't have the Mind Stone, into Wanda reuniting with White Vision, because as we saw in this episode, she has a piece of the Mind Stone inside of her from her origin story when she reaches out and touches the Infinity Stone in the Strucker lab, or the Hydra lab run by Strucker. So I think there's definitely going to be a callback there, and I'm curious to see where we go with White Vision. He's more of, at least from the beginning, seems to be more of have the Ultron side of Vision than, because he's more machine than
especially in the voice, you could tell. Definitely Ultron was the main intelligence that was surfacing until he got the memories back. So is there anything else about White Vision we want to talk about? He just disappears, but he doesn't show up again, which is the biggest disappointment for me, of course. But like I said, I'm excited to see where he can show up again.
Right. Now, that leads me to another character reveal we have here that I think the next character that I think was really poorly handled in this series. Monica Rambeau, or Spectrum. Spectrum, correct?
It's just a shoe-in spin-off origin story, generic for your TV show. It's the way that the Flash TV show came about. The Flash was got his powers at the end of one of Arrow's episodes, and then he became its own show. What do we have here? Monica Rambeau gets her own powers, and then sure enough, she's going to show up in another movie somewhere.
No, let's talk about this, though, because I liked your prediction earlier on in the season. Obviously, we didn't get to see it come to fruition in this show.
But they're making. I know. Let me put it out there. What my prediction, so people know. My prediction. Are you talking about the X-Men?
Yes. Or at least
mutants entering the MCU was my prediction. And Monica Rambeau is the first mutant. Didn't really know if it actually panned out by the end of this finale, which is my biggest knock against this. Is I don't know what happened to all these people after.
That's what I was going to say. Yes. How come Monica Rambeau got powers from going through the X, and yet these other people who have crossed back and forth now, I mean, maybe are they going to have powers? We don't know. We haven't seen anything.
Yeah, I'm 100% on your side with this, but the only thing that still is having me hold out hope that we're integrating mutants in this way is the visual references. And let me talk. I'm going to go comic book. I'm going to go comic book on you right now. Maybe I'm skipping ahead a little too far, but when Wanda gets her final Scarlet Witch costume, it harkens back to what I've talked about since the first episode. The House of M comics. She's wearing the House of M Scarlet Witch costume at the end of this episode, which was amazing. Did you like the new costume?
Yes, absolutely.
It looks so cool. And especially, how when she's flying away and she has the cloak on, she has that cloak in the House of M, which is where she has her kids, and there's Vision there, and there's all these. The House of M is this reality bending thing that has to do with her father, Magneto, of the X-Men universe. So, which obviously isn't established in this, but of course, what I'm saying here is that there's a lot of visual references, especially in the way that the world is kind of like deconstructed, and when the kids are getting deconstructed and Vision's getting deconstructed, there's little cubes falling off of them. That's a direct reference to those X-Men, that comic storyline with the X-Men and Scarlet Witch. And so they're definitely visually referencing it. Whether or not they actually bring it in this way, I don't know.
Well,
sorry if that was long.
Either way, with Monica Rambeau, poorly handled.
Yeah, sorry if I went on.
No, it's cool. It's cool. No, I'm excited to hear all this. And the thing with Monica Rambeau, she has powers. We get to see him once when she goes to protect Billy and Tommy, and she goes, I don't know what you want to call it, clear, and it stops bullets.
Yeah, she uses her powers.
Sure. And then she also has the power. She was able to identify what of Wanda's was mind controlling Quicksilver. But let's also talk about Quicksilver. I think that's an important part. That even though this guy is another person in Wanda's universe, she's also given him powers.
Right.
Which, she doesn't really give anyone powers except for, herself. We know she has powers. Obviously, Billy and Tommy, her children. But then Quicksilver.
Yeah. I don't know how this is working.
Because once again, is it Agatha who brought Quicksilver in, or is it Wanda? Because it looked like when Monica Rambeau was looking over what was controlling his powers, the necklace that he had on that was scarlet, was not purple. So it wasn't.
Oh, no, it was purple.
Oh, was it? I thought it was scarlet. Okay, my bad.
It was Agatha that.
Okay, then never mind.
Okay.
I digress. So revert away from that sidebar. There was no real Quicksilver in this episode, except for the fact that he's just another person in the universe.
Yeah.
Although we don't know why he has the ability to, in the Halloween episode, talk to Wanda quite literally, except for that it was Agatha Harkness trying to get in Wanda's head.
Him, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Then I'm okay with that.
Yeah, that was it.
Monica Rambeau, another character that was really wedged in. We don't know what's going on with her or the other people who have gone in and out of the Hex.
Captain Marvel too. That's my.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. I mean, we get that in the post-credit scene too, where she's greeted by one of the Skrulls, possibly Talos' wife. I forget her name.
Yeah.
From Captain America. I couldn't tell because.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
I don't know.
She goes, an old, your old friend of your mother's wants to meet you. He heard you'd been grounded, and she goes, "Oh, where is she?" And she goes, "Up there," which kind of pissed me off. I mean, it further shows us that Nick Fury's in space, and so Nick Fury's going to be in Captain Marvel too, and it's going to be Monica Rambeau because Maria Rambeau's dead. Okay, great. We've gotten through all the characters. I mean,
I think we need to talk about a few other things in this episode. Number one, Billy and Tommy disappear in the end. So no more Billy, no more Tommy.
Well, obviously, if they didn't, that would have really made me mad because if Vision disappeared, Billy and Tommy had to disappear too. They were created by Wanda in the Hex.
Which is what was...
actually, hold on.
Okay, yeah.
Before we get to that, or maybe I wanted to talk about the final battle between the
we gotta talk about it.
Okay.
So she tries to use her nightmare powers that you mentioned earlier, right, on Agatha.
Yep.
They have that fight sequence in the nightmare where Agatha kind of uses her Wanda's own magic against her. They fly out of this nightmare sequence back into the Hex, and they're floating above Westview, and they're fighting, and Wanda's flinging her powers all over. And
Wanda's flinging her powers because she agrees to give her powers to Agatha. She said, because Agatha cuts her deal. She says, "I will fix your Hex. All I want is your powers, but you can live basically happily ever after with Vision and your children, and I can fix it so that your visitors aren't in pain." And she agreed. Well, at least as we see,
it was more like an anger thing too. It was like, "You want my powers? Here you go." And then she was just like, wailing on her.
Right. But we see her miss.
And we see her
and we assume it's because she's getting weaker and weaker and she's losing her powers. But in reality, it's not. She's
using Agatha's own lesson against her. She puts runes all around the Hex walls that are surrounding Westview, and she nullifies Agatha's magic and is able to regain her own and defeat Agatha. And I love this sequence.
I didn't get it. First of all, I have no idea why Wanda, after seeing a rune once in her life, would be able to create these giant runes.
I think you're questioning it too much, honestly.
And number two was, she gave up her powers. Whether or not Agatha can use her powers doesn't mean Wanda gets her powers back.
Yeah,
I felt like, once again, I'm 100% reading too far into it, but I'm a logical person. So.
Once again, Ryan, let me, I gladly will rebut my point if you can bring me the Darkhold, open it, and show me the proof that magic doesn't work that way. Okay?
I'm just saying I want a consistent story.
Dude, they haven't explained magic that much. And
you're absolutely right.
And you're absolutely right, too, in that point, that it really doesn't make quote-unquote sense. You just have to accept it. It's just magic. It's like in Harry Potter. You accept that he could fly a broomstick and catch a golden snitch because it's magic. I think that's all it has to be. What do you think?
Okay. I was disappointed with this series, so there's plenty of things I have to accept. That doesn't mean I have to like it. Okay, so, we get that. So now our end for Agatha is she traps Agatha in Agnes's body in the real Westview. She's going to live there. And like we said, it'll probably be recalled in Multiverse of Madness. Wanda's going to stumble across something she doesn't get about magic, and she's going to have to come to Agnes. Agnes may escape. That's maybe what opens up the multiverse. That's all going to be discussed about in our prediction section. But okay, go ahead and wrap it up with the bow.
I didn't know where you were going. I thought.
Okay, so wrap it up with the bow in this section, and we'll go into predictions. Then we'll be done. No, it's a long episode, guys. It's the finale. Come on now.
Okay. So basically, let's just talk about my favorite scene in the whole show. Not show, but this episode. My favorite scene in this episode is our final sequence here between Wanda and Vision. Wanda turns off a light. Vision turns one back on and says we shouldn't say goodbye in the dark. I thought this entire sequence, this conversation between Wanda and Vision was beautiful. I thought it capped off the series emotionally. Until this scene, I was going to feel underwhelmed with the show as a whole. I thought, oh, wow, this was a terrible finale. But this really redefined what the show was about, which the director, I've watched some interviews, what he said. This was a show about someone having to accept their grief. And that's what happened in this scene. And I thought it was very beautifully done the way that they said, we've said goodbye before, so it makes sense that we'll say hello again.
Yes.
And I thought that was beautiful. And one more point on this, and I want to know what your opinion is, especially on this. The fact that Wanda reveals that the Hex Vision is a piece, the piece of the Mind Stone that was inside Wanda, and she had basically, he's the epitome of all her sadness and love and everything, like her heart, I guess, too, which is basically the metaphor I was getting, you know, when the previous episode, when we see him get birthed out of her, he comes out of her chest, right? Her heart. So literally and figuratively, he's her heart and his head.
Yes.
So, or her, you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, and that makes
I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah, it was very poetic. You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that's necessarily what we were looking for in this show, but it definitely was one of the big positive takeaways from the show was the storyline of Wanda and Hex Vision, who is very different from our actual
love was real, and I think there's something powerful about that.
Correct.
Yeah. So, and I really like that the show ended like that. I'm sad to see that the children are gone, and we didn't get to see more of their powers.
I mean, are they though?
Which leads us into
the final post-credit scene.
Let's go right there.
Yeah, we've talked about the first post-credit scene, which was Monica Rambeau. Let's talk about our second post-credit scene. We get this mountain lakescape. We have Wanda, calmly sort of sitting in this serene past, drinking tea in this cabin. But then we cut back to her bedroom where Wanda is also, which I didn't really understand the reasoning for this, but Wanda's also back there sort of in a panic, reading through the Book of the Damned, and she hears what we think are Tommy and Billy's voices crying out to her. Yeah. I think saying help.
Yeah, they're saying help, mom, or something like that. And is this Wanda creating the quote-unquote multiverse of madness to get Billy and Tommy back? Does Wanda go too far with the Darkhold and unleash something she can't control, and she needs Doctor Strange's help to clean it up? We'll see.
Doctor Strange, or are we going to have Agatha Harkness first? Because that's sort of more my going into predictions. But
biggest name drop, Sorcerer Supreme, which we get when Agatha
Scarlet Witch is even more powerful than the Sorcerer Supreme.
Exactly. Yeah. So big drop there. So where are we going with this? My biggest gripe with this post-credit scene is the same one you have, Ryan. What's this? What are we trying to say with Wanda creating this illusion of herself drinking tea, and then we also see her as Scarlet Witch reading the Darkhold? Is it just showing that her powers are improving? I'm not sure. What do you think?
I think it may just be, we see her walk away from Westview as a hated person. I think it's just a facade that she's putting up, that she's in a new place, almost Bruce Banner-esque in The Incredible Hulk when he's in Brazil and trying to hide himself. I think she's just trying to hide her own powers, and that's why we see maybe this facade that she's able to put up, that she's just a person who's trying to get some relaxation at this mountain lake, where really though she's back, using her Scarlet Witch powers. It's the dichotomy, maybe even the splitting of Wanda Maximoff from the Scarlet Witch, showing that they are even in one person, two separate entities.
Yeah, I think you're right. I really like that reading of it, Ryan. That's a great way to leave it off. Biggest predictions for Multiverse of Madness.
Yeah.
Because we've been told this is directly where we're going from this.
I think you have a great point on Wanda Maximoff, or Scarlet Witch, whatever you want to call her, losing control here in learning about herself and the Scarlet Witch, unleashing the multiverse of madness right here. We make it, as far as I'm seeing it, going right into Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, picking up right from this post-credit scene, and possibly, you know, after she loses control, going to Agnes, you know, unleashing Agatha Harkness. Agatha Harkness is angry. She becomes a villain. She, you know, and then having to go to Doctor Strange. And, you know, I think there will be a battle with Wanda Maximoff or Scarlet Witch and Doctor Strange against Agatha Harkness, who has control or more control in the multiverse. And I think it's going to be visually and storyline, at least I hope, incredible. So, yeah. Because once again, I was very disappointed with WandaVision. Not because it was a bad show, but because my expectations were too high. And my expectations are very high, as are yours, I know, for Multiverse of Madness, and I hope it does not let us down.
Sam Raimi, don't disappoint us.
All right.
But that is actually one thing I wanted to mention. Best part, one of the best parts, because we have to leave it off on a positive, one of the best parts of this show, the visuals, on par with what we kind of have started to see with Mandalorian, the most expensive television show ever made, kind of carrying over into this show, although I do have to say some of the CGI was a little shoddy with Wanda's powers, you know, a little bit here and there, but for the most part, when anyone's flying, like across the screen and their body is tiny, it looks kind of fake. Yeah. You know, like when Wanda is chasing after Agatha and she's flying across the screen, that looks kind of fake, but the close-up stuff looks really high quality. That's what's so great about like a guy like Iron Man. You know, you can close up on a CG Iron Man and have no idea that it's not Tony Stark, or, you know, all Iron Man scenes, you know, they're not Tony Stark in a suit, they're CG. But that's what made Iron Man so amazing. Exactly. You know, it's harder to do that, obviously, when you have a character like Wanda Maximoff who, you know, looks like just a normal human being. Which is my kind of final point here, you know, as we're talking predictions. Is this WandaVision the comparison point of Iron Man? Is this our incubation point for what's going to happen for the rest of our, you know, next few phases? I don't know if this is going to be the central storyline. I know that magic is going to take a central storyline. They're very clearly saying magic is going to be at the forefront. But once again, I think they're going to go mutants. I think they're going to go Fantastic Four. Obviously, they've announced a Fantastic Four movie, but how is it all going to connect? Yeah. How are they going to unite everything like the way that they did with the Infinity Stones? We didn't get any answers to that in this show, which is, you know, maybe unrightfully so. That's kind of what we wanted, was where are we going big picture wise? This was much smaller scale. That's what WandaVision was, and I'm happy with what we got. And I'm happy with the origin story of Wanda, kind of just like the origin story of Tony Stark. Okay. But you just disagree with everything I say. I don't disagree with everything you say, but I think to compare this to the film Iron Man, I don't see it. I don't see. I don't know. Even character-wise, you don't see the. Maybe. I think the point is maybe. But I think the point of the rest of the MCU, ever since Iron Man, is that Tony Stark started everything. Correct. You know, he started literally Scarlet Witch's journey with the missile. With the missile, exactly. Yeah, and just like everything else in this MCU, he's had a hand in. So I think there's something to say for that. Okay. If it wasn't for like I said, you know, I'm almost saying I hope it's not, just because this was so underwhelming as an origin story to me. I didn't think like I said, you know, this show was an excellent television show, episodes 1 through 6. It had a gimmick. And I loved it. Episodes 1 through 7. Yeah. 8 and 9 were just so, they should have been put together and given an extra hour of exposition and been a feature film. And that's what I miss about the MCU. So I'm really hoping that it, you know, this isn't the way we're going to go, but it looks like it is the way we're going to go. I'm bought into the MCU, so I'm going to watch Falcon and Winter Soldier and Loki and whatever else they throw at us. But I can't. Better than not getting anything at all, right? I mean, to say
this is the equivalent of Iron Man, and you know, our main hero / anti-hero is going to be Wanda Maximoff, Scarlet Witch.
I'm just saying thematically. I'm not saying it's actually the equivalent.
I hope they build on her more, because right now I'm somewhat disappointed.
Yeah, and it's a smaller scale introduction to the MCU than we've had before.
Correct.
I think the next MCU movies are going to do big strides. We'll see. Here's looking forward to that. Of course, WandaVision's over now, but you can look forward to weekly Winter Soldier or Falcon and the Winter Soldier reviews coming in the next 2 weeks after this video drops. 2 weeks from then, we're going to start our series of that. Of course, we do have a few more movie reviews coming your way on the list. Planet of the Apes trilogy in the incubation period. Still going to...
Ford vs. Ferrari.
Ford vs.
Bad Education.
Bad Education.
Yeah.
A few others, of course, we'll figure out down the road.
As we watch, yeah.
Do you want to tell them where we can follow?
Yeah, you can follow us. Well, you can find that down in the description.
Yeah.
I did want to say, just before we leave, Dom, because I'm curious, because I'm really out of the loop. What are our next MCU feature films coming out, and when can we expect those? I feel like everything's been put on hold since Black Widow, and now we're talking about Doctor Strange and Multiverse of Madness, and it's almost like we've forgotten about Black Widow.
Yeah.
Where are we going with MCU films?
Next is Black Widow. Okay. That's in May.
Okay.
That's the most immediate one. Then, of course, we have Eternals, which is supposed to be related to what we're seeing somewhat. Are we going to see how magic came about? I think that's where we're going. Okay. With that. And then, of course, we have Doctor Strange. We have... I don't know if Doctor Strange is this year. It might be Doctor Strange is next year. Okay. But at the end of this year, we have Spider-Man 3. Okay. Whatever happened to Seven Rings? Shang-Chi. Shang-Chi, yes. I thought that was supposed to be one of the more recent ones coming out. It's still coming out later. Okay. Yeah, not 2021. Got it. Okay. But, I thought that was on schedule before Doctor Strange and before Spider-Man. But, everything, got sort of thrown off and on a crazy new timeline with COVID, which, hopefully, fingers crossed, we're at the tail end of. Our movie theaters just opened back up here in the Bay Area. Don't know that we'll be going to any movies soon, but, as it opens up and more people get vaccinated, maybe. Really looking forward to bringing you our reviews for all of these. The MCU, obviously one of our main central themes here at Top of the List. But thanks, everybody, for tuning in to another week's episode of Top of the List. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Those of you listening on our podcast channels, be sure to give us a 5-star review, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. And like we said, follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Message us anything you want to see us review, what your thoughts were on WandaVision. Do you agree with us? Do you disagree? But otherwise, we look forward to seeing you next couple of weeks for movie reviews and then Falcon and Winter Soldier reviews. Later.